Understanding land documentation in Nigeria. Now, this is a beginner's guide. So if you're looking to buy a property, land or house in Nigeria, one of the most important things you need to understand is land documentation, because this actually proves ownership. It protects your investment, as well as ensures that you don't lose your hard-earned money to either government acquisition, either fraud, or any form of dispute at all. Now, in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the process of land documentation in Nigeria. I'm going to be talking about the history of land documentation. I'm going to be talking about the different types of land documentations in Nigeria that you need to know. I'm also going to be talking about the specific land documentation in Abuja, Nigeria, and why land documentation is important. And lastly, I'm going to be sharing with you how to verify land documents in Nigeria before buying. What is the history of land documentation in Nigeria? Now, before 1978, land ownership in Nigeria was largely customary. So what that means is that before you could acquire a property, land or house, lands in Nigeria, you need to go through a traditional ruler, a village chief, or a family, right? And you need to deal with multiple family members. Now, this system made land transactions very difficult. What that meant is that if a chief or a traditional ruler doesn't like your face, you're likely not going to get a land ever in your life. Or just imagine that your wife and the wife of one of the traditional rulers have an issue. That means that you and your generation will never own lands in Nigeria. So to make this easier, in 1978, the Land Use Act was introduced. Now, with the Land Use Act, the law gave the government control of all the lands in Nigeria. Now, under this system, the governor of each state becomes the caretaker of all the lands in that state, and the FCT minister in the case of Abuja. So individuals and companies could now get land rights through a certificate of occupancy, otherwise called a C of O, issued by the government. So this law changed how land ownership in Nigeria worked, and so introduced the land documentation. And this is why this is very important that you should know. So what are the types of land documentation in Nigeria? We're going to look at some of the common ones. There are a couple of them, but we'll just look at some common ones, and probably in another video we'll try to dissect each and every one of them one at a time. So the first land document type we should look at in this video is called the Certificate of Occupancy, otherwise called the C of O. So this is the most recognized land title issued by the state government to an individual or a company, whoever is purchasing the land. Now, this title gives the holder legal ownership for as long as 99 years, after which you can renew it, right? And every land owner should actually strive to own a certificate of ownership, because this actually gives you, full legal ownership over a plot of land or over the land you are acquiring. Now, the next one we're going to be looking at for the case of this video is called a deed of assignment. Now, when a holder of a C of O wants to sell his land to another individual, so Mr. A has a C of O and he wants to sell that land to Mr. B. Mr. A issues a document to Mr. B called a deed of assignment. So it's simply an agreement between Mr. A and Mr. B transferring legal ownership of that C of O land to Mr. B, right? Now, that title called a deed of assignment can now, Mr. B can now go ahead to register that title at the Ministry of Lands, right? Now, we're going to also look at Excision and a Gazette. This type of titles are usually used in the southwest of Nigeria, mostly in Lagos, right? Excision is simply the government cutting out a portion of a government acquired land and issuing it back to the community for individual use, right? So a portion of land in a community that is under government acquisition, the government now decides to cut out excision, like excise a portion of that land back to the community so they can use it for either their personal use or for to sell to private individuals, right? Now, that process is called excision, and usually a document showing that this has happened is usually issued. However, a gazette is now an official record that shows a list of all the excise lands within an area. All right, so that is what an excision is, and then a gazette is. Now, the fourth type of document we're going to be looking at is called a governor's consent. Now, remember the example I gave earlier. A C of O holder is transferring title to another person. So person A has a C of O, transferring title to person B, right? C of O on a specific land can only be issued once in the lifetime of that land, right? So, but what then happens? The person A gives person B a deed of assignment alongside a copy of that C of O or the C of O itself. Person B now takes that deed of assignment and C of O back to the government through the Ministry of Lands or FCDA in the case of Abuja to go and register that transaction. So that registration, a document is issued called a governor's consent. So this is like the government officially, legally recognizing that transaction that just happened. The fifth type of document we're going to be looking at today is called a survey plan. So a survey plan shows the exact location and dimension of a land, right? A land you're trying to acquire. It is usually done by a licensed surveyor and is registered with the government. And the number 5 type of document we're going to be looking at today is called the receipt of purchase. So this simply shows that there was a transaction. That is all. It is not necessarily a land title, but it's just important for the sake of records, right? Now that we have looked at the history of land documentation in Nigeria, we have looked at the types of land documents, a few of them in Nigeria. Now, let's look at the types of land documents in Abuja particularly. Abuja has a unique land system because all lands belong to the federal government of Nigeria, and the FCDA manages and allocates lands in Abuja. Now, here are some key land documents in Abuja. A few of them, not all of it. The first is the right of occupancy, otherwise called an R of O. In Abuja, you get to hear R of O a lot. What is this? This is simply a temporal land title issued before the landowner gets a C of O. Now, it grants permission, full permission to the landowner to use the land. However, it doesn't transfer full ownership, but it grants permission, pending when the landowner fulfill other obligations of the R of O to get a C of O. So the next type of title in Abuja is called a certificate of occupancy, that otherwise called a C of O. Now, this is issued, of course, by the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory. This actually proves land ownership, okay? The third type of title document in Abuja is called the FCDA allocation letter. This is given when a land is allocated directly by the FCDA and it proves land allocation before the C of O is granted. So before the C of O is granted, this land allocation, FCDA allocation letter, proves that this person, this holder, has been allocated this land. The fourth type of land title we're going to be looking at for Abuja is the letter of intent. Now, usually issued for lands under the FCDA mass housing scheme. So it shows that this land has been approved to a developer so that he can build the land in conformity with the plan of the area. All right, so it's usually given for mass housing schemes in Abuja. There are several types of other land documents in Abuja, but these are the few common ones around. Now, let's now look at why land documentation is important. Why is this important? Notice that many people have lost their lands because they didn't get proper documentation on the land. And here's why this is very important. First, this proves ownership, legal ownership. It's not enough to pay somebody for a property and the person now points to a land and allows you to start building it. No, you also need to get the document because it proves legal ownership. Number two, it prevents government and families disputes. So if the government comes to maybe take a property, your property, based on maybe government overriding interests, with your document, you're compensated, you're reallocated or something, right? That proves, it helps you, it prevents issues, okay? Number three, this increases the value of the land, right? Especially when you want to resell the land. So when they go for a search or you present a proper document with your name on it, it just improves or increases the value of the land. Number four, allows you get bank loans. So when you want to go get a loan from the bank, as a business owner, or you need the money for something very important, you ask for a document, because it's not enough to point at a land or a house and say, oh, I own that. No, you need to show a document, a legal document that proves your ownership. Lastly, how do you verify lands in Nigeria? Before you buy a land, how do you verify using the document to be sure that the land is authentic, right? First, you check the title. So ask for a copy of the title of the land, whether it's a C of O, a deed of assignment, a gazette, whatever it is. Ask for a title, right? Next, conduct the search. So you go to the State Ministry of Lands or the FCDA in the case of Abuja to confirm the genuinity of that land, right? Number three, and this is very important, use a professional. Hire a property lawyer or hire a registered surveyor to guide you. The lawyer helps you verify that document. You can read through the thin lines to be sure that there are no clauses or lines that have some issues, right? And then the registered surveyor goes to the land to pick the coordinate of the land to ensure that what is on paper conforms with what is on the land. Lastly, just avoid lands under government acquisition completely. There are lands that I see in Abuja and in other parts of the country that are reserved for green area, for roads, for schools, or other projects. And I see people sell that same land to other people for residential purpose or commercial. So try and simply avoid this. And of course, working with a realtor, a real estate consultant that understands this business and knows their game, working with a property lawyer and a registered surveyor helps you avoid a couple of these issues. Now, in summary, land documentation in Nigeria is very important when buying a land. It is important you have the right documents before you lose your land, and also so that you can verify that the land you're trying to buy is genuine. We at Browdy, we sell genuine lands with good government approved documents, and we are happy to help you both in Enugu and in Abuja. And we have one of such kind of amazing properties in Enugu at Independence Layout, Parks and Jacks Road, Independence Layout. 2 minutes from the government house is an beautifully built luxury 10-unit duplex estate called River Hills Estate. Comes with a C of O, and so you're sure that the title document on the land is amazing. Call the numbers or WhatsApp the numbers on your screen for more information about this estate or any other estate we have in Enugu or in Abuja. If you found this video useful, kindly like, share and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day.